So we have your site file here. And so I know a few of you have been doing your elevations with detail lines. And what I more specifically mean, the elevations of your grade with detail lines. And so I guess the question is, how do we do that with topography? How do we make that work? So here's my site. It kind of resembles yours a little bit, maybe not exactly. So the first thing we want to start off with is doing topography. So we're just going to go to massing and site, and we're going to hit the topo solid button here. And so this topo solid button, it automatically has something preloaded in. And what we can do here is we want to draw a box. And so when you're working in 2024 compared to 2023, it kind of works the same, but almost in backwards. So in 2023, we're using the points to create the shape. Whereas in 2024, we create the shape, then we place the points. So it's like the steps kind of changed. So what I usually do is if I know my site is this, I maybe will draw a bigger box. It doesn't matter how big, but I'll just draw a box that's beyond those points. And I'm going to click No to attach. The other thing I'm just going to do quickly here is right now you see my grid lines on the site. We don't want to see grid lines on the site. We just want to see the building itself. So I'm just going to go to VG on the keyboard. We're going to go to annotation categories. I'm just going to hit G to scroll down to the letter G, and I'm going to turn off my grid lines. So now I kind of see a nice clean site plan. And so my building's a little bit faked here, so I'm going to say this is my loading dock area. And so when it comes to the site, we want to start with our points. If you remember looking at the PDF, we are probably at the most negative 762, I believe. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set this whole topography down negative 0.762. And so that means the whole property is going to be down, or the whole topography is going to be down. And what that's going to look like now is, if you can kind of see, maybe not, the topography should be, you can kind of see it right there. There's like a little gap underneath. Just verify that, 762. So the next step with this is we want to, or is this in millimeters? Let me just hit UN for a second. Length, that's meters. Okay, so that's right. Yeah, 762. So now when we want to place points, we want to go up here to modify sub-elements. So that's kind of how you create points. Before I do that, I want to do one other thing to this topography. And I mean to hit the exit button there. Is I want to actually draw these roads because it just makes it a little bit neater to actually see the roads. So with our topography, Revit used to have a split surface button up here. Now it's kind of built into the topography itself. So we can go over here and we can click subdivide. And I'm going to do two subdivisions. I'm going to do one for the streets, and then I'm going to do one for the driveways or the roads on our actual property. So let's click here. Let's click the pick line button, and we should be able to pick all the streets there. And let's set a pavement here. So let's just type in pavement, and there should be there might be one or there might not be any loaded in. So if we go down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our road to be like a light gray. And then I'm going to set our property to be like a darker gray. Because it's kind of what you'll typically see. You'll see the roads are often like an older pavement. And then the properties might have a newer, actually it might be reversed too. But it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do my roads, my streets as my light gray. And if it's, I already have one up there. So I'm just going to load that. I'm going to use that one there. And we're going to click the check mark. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to click my topography. I'm going to click subdivide. And this time I'm going to do my roads. You can obviously notice my roads are based on the feasibility study roads. I haven't really updated them, but it's the same concept. So we're just going to use the pick line button again. And we're going to click this. And we'll click this inner one. And here we also do have our loading bay. So I'm just going to actually add, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to add our loading bay, maybe make this whole corner pavement, I guess. Something like that. And I don't know why that's all the way out there. So we'll do that. and we'll click our check mark. And so if we go to our 3D view, we now have this subdivided a little bit. And so let's make this one the dark gray. So let's just type in pavement again. And we'll bring up the dark gray here. And that just gives you a little bit of hierarchy with this. We don't see this in hidden line, but if we were to go to, I think shaded maybe. No, we don't even see it. That's very green. Textures. So yeah, it's consistent colors, or yeah. So that you see it there a little bit. The other thing I like to do, this doesn't really matter a whole lot, but I usually change this grass to actually be plant. And I just find this plant color is like a very neutral green. So it's a little bit more subtle in terms of what it looks like, and a little bit easier on the eyes versus that other green. So how now we have our pavement situated. We have our topography situated. The other thing that I want to look at, if you look here, this pavement is actually quite thick. So what I'm going to do with both of these is I'm going to just change both of these to maybe be 0.05. So they're basically 50 millimeters. So they're just a tiny sliver. They're not super thick. And then we want to start with our points. So let's go back to our site file here, and we're going to start placing some points. So if you remember, the first thing we have is some points around our property. So over here we have a negative 609, and we have a negative 609. So property kind of slopes up from the this road, I guess, a little bit. So let's go back to our Revit file here. And what we want to do is we want to click on the topography, not the subdivision. And we're going to click add point. And this part is where it gets confusing. It says along surface, absolute, or snap XY. I'm going to go to absolute. And we're going to go this based on current level or project base point. In this case, they're both the same because I never changed my elevation above sea level. So I'm just going to go, I'll leave it on current level. And we're going to select our corners to be, let me just see. Yeah, so this should work. So if we go to negative 0.0 or 609, I think that's what it was. And we'll set that at the corner of our property. And the corner of our property. Corner of our property. The one thing you'll notice is, and actually, you know what, let's do the negative 762. And let's just set those at the street corners, because I set the outer corners of the topo surface to be that negative 62. So it's actually going to slope from the outer corners, where we actually just want it to slope from the road. So I'm just going to add a couple points here. And Y is too thin for that. What did I do? Oh, I did negative 600 or 762. That would be Y. And so let's place those now. I don't know why it's giving me that error. We'll find that out. And maybe I'll add a couple extra points along those sides. And so when we look at this, let's see, I deleted my roads. Let's just go back in and do that quickly. Click this. And we'll do our subdivide. And we'll click our pick lines again. The other button that I had troubles with was that it gave us that error message for the surface is too thin. So sometimes I make the bottom layer, I'll make it like 60 or 70 feet, and then you won't get that error message because it'll just cut the topography. So there's that. Delete these lines. Like so. Check mark. And subdivide action. That is interesting. So the one reason why this might be happening is its proximity to the other subdivide. So I'm just going to do this for a second and see if that fixes it. It does. So sometimes what you can do is just make it like half an inch, or 5 millimeters offset. Like it doesn't need to be a lot, or 12 millimeters offset. So just making it a little bit offset, that's obviously more, but it still works now. And we'll change this to be our pavement. So I think that's why, because it started to slope and then they were like overlapping kind of, and so that's why it was breaking it. That's my theory anyways. And then we'll make this 0.5. No, I actually don't want 0.5. I want 0.05, like that. And so it's really hard to tell, but we are technically having a bit of slope here. So if I were cutting a section here, we would have the topography slope up a little bit. Possible to see, but there is a bit of a slope there, right? It's ever so slight, right? So now the next thing we want to look at is our building. So if we go back to our PDF and we look at our building, we have negative 48 inches, we have negative 18 inches, negative 48, negative 8. So we have all these different numbers all over the place. So let's start placing those around our building. And again, I'm just going to kind of make it up for my project. But the one thing I am going to use is I'm going to use lines when I do this. So I'm going to click on my topography. I'm going to click add split line. And so the first one I'm going to do is right here, because this is where I want my loading dock. And so this is how I would do it, is I'd create one on the inside of our foundation wall. So you can see how it's not snapping on that line, it's snapping on the inside of the wall. So what I would do is I'd create one along here, maybe go to the edge of the wall, and I'd create one coming down this line. And I think we probably need 10 meters. We don't need it to be that long. So let's find, maybe 10 meters actually looks a little small. So let's do 20 meters. And then we'll also do the same over here. We'll do our 20 meters. And so what these look like, I'm just going to go back to 3D. We'll click this modify sub-elements. And so we see those two lines we had there, or three lines. We can actually now make those negative 1.2. And that's negative 1.2 from, yeah, we'll do something like that. Or actually, sorry, let's leave those as 0. And then what we're going to do is another set of lines inside that, and those will be down negative 1.2. So we're just kind of sloping that area down. And this is where this will get interesting too, because what we're going to do, let me go back to the site view, and hopefully this is not too complicated. This part's kind of the only hard part. Like the other points is just placing points at negative 6 inches. But this part's the only hard part. So let's add a point, or let's add a line here. This time we're going to do the line a little bit inside. Where is that line? I'm going to switch this view to wireframe. And it still doesn't see it. Let's try that again. Modify. So let's add a split line. So let's draw that line here. And you can draw it along here as well. And then I'm just going to move this one just in a little bit. And what that looks like in 3D is we have, grid lines are showing in 3D. Sometimes you just need to zoom out to actually grab that surface. But it kind of looks like we have this double line here. And oh, it's being weird with the selection here. So now we'll make this inner one, we'll make this negative 1.2. And so now that kind of slopes in like that. And so that becomes your loading dock. And then once you model your foundation walls, you won't see the ground part, or the green part, sorry. But that's kind of how we do the loading docks. And then going around the rest of the building, it's kind of the same concept. That part's obviously the hard one. But with this, we'll just add a point, and we'll just do our, up here we'll go to our absolute. We'll do negative negative 0.15, so 150 millimeters or 6 inches. You could also just type in negative 6 inches, and Revit will automatically do the math for you and convert that into millimeters. And now we could just click these points all around our property for those other areas. And sometimes you might want to add some extra points. I'll probably do these ones as points and just do the loading dock as lines, just so it kind of creates a bit of organization. Then the other thing you can do Obviously in the building you'll have those trench walls, but over here, what we can do is just add a foundation wall along this spot here, and that'll hide that slope. So what does this look like? So we got this wall here. What I'll do is I'll make this maybe 150 above grade, or actually 0 in this case, right? Because grade is 150 below. So if I'm just make it at the level 1, it'll be at the right height. So the top will be 0. Bottom, let's do the bottom is like negative 1.5. And then this one will be level 1 and add 0. And that just creates a, oh, I put 1.5, not negative 1. Negative 1.5, 5, and level 1. And so now you have like a bit of a retaining wall there to retain that. And I think those top lines we need to be at, so these lines actually should be at negative 150. Go. And why is this point? This point needs to be negative 1.2. There we go. So now that wall basically acts as a retaining wall in that loading dock area. So that's kind of how you set that up for it. I mean, I don't know if that seemed complicated or not, but I think once you start to model those points and use those lines, it makes a little bit more sense. If that seems a little complicated, the other thing you could do is in your site file, you could draw a couple lines. So like you see how I have this retaining wall here? You could just do that as detail lines. So you can kind of start by drawing it as detail lines. And then when you go to do the split regions, you just trace those detail lines of where you want the different split lines to be. So that's how I'd set that up. And now when you go to your elevations, which actually I don't know if I moved my elevations. Let's see here. Let's go to reveal hidden elements. And so my elevations are still inside. So I'm going to grab the arrow and the circle at the same time, drag that out. And now I see where this line is. This line is the actual elevation. So I'll often drag that out. And then for a project like this, I maybe will move the line back in so it's closer to our building. And so now when I go to that north elevation, we do see the topography kind of slope away and from the building on the sides, like that. And then you could also cut a building section. So we had that building section, but if we cut a building section through this now, we can see that topography kind of slope down like that. And again, this little drop between those two split lines will be hidden inside your wall, so you theoretically won't see that. So that's how to create a loading dock with TopoSolids.